Obviously, you have decades of experience in aviation safety and consultation. I guess the first thing is when this happened and you learned of it, what was the first thing that went through your mind?
The complexity of the airport and the airspace there, and how the helicopter could have gotten mixed up in the flight path of the airplane. Things should have been separated a whole lot better than they were, obviously.
Yeah.
The confusion about the helicopter being anywhere near where an airliner would be landing is puzzling.
Yeah. My sister works in the district. I have family in Alexandria. I've flown into that airport countless times, but for those who don't or haven't, describe what that's like and the flight path for inbound planes.
Well, let's discuss the layout of the airport. The Potomac River divides Washington, D.C. from Virginia. The approach in the vicinity of the airport, which is located on the west bank of the Potomac, we have our approach courses with the landing toward the north. The airplanes fly over the Potomac toward the airport. On a north operation, when they depart, they follow the Potomac also. Washington is very sensitive as to noise abatement, and safety issues as well. It's a complex airport. Most of the pilots that fly in there fly in at a regular basis, and they're very familiar with what's going on. I can see nothing abnormal with the operation of the airplane. The airplane would have approached over the river through the areas close to the Maryland and Virginia line. Apparently, there was another airplane taking off on runway 36, which is the longest runway there. It's about 6,900 feet long. The other runways are shorter. There are two other runways, and they form a triangle, if you will. So we had our airplane on approach when the other airplane was about to take off. Now, the controller would ask our arriving airplane if he could land on one of the other runways, because that would give him a little time to maneuver the aircraft and provide more time to get the departing aircraft out of his way, which is what happened. So our aircraft was going to land on runway 33. He turned to the right slightly and proceeded over toward the DC side of the river. And about that time, the helicopter was coming down the east side of the river. Helicopter turned slightly and seemed to go right into the area of the approaching aircraft. Now, why it was not visible in what we call the ADS-B system, which the aircraft and helicopter should have had installed to enable them to see each other, is puzzling. We've heard that the helicopter may have been on a different radio frequency than the airplane. This would have caused some additional confusion, as the airplane would not have heard the helicopter's transmissions or vice versa. We understand that the helicopter was told to pass behind an airplane, a jet that was in view. We don't know whether the helicopter pilot actually saw the aircraft that caused the accident, or whether he was mistaken and was looking somewhere else, perhaps at the aircraft that was departing. But at any rate, the fact that he was not able to pass behind the accident aircraft was certainly a great part of the puzzle here.
Yeah, absolutely. This isn't the only place and time where military aircraft share airspace with civilian aircraft. When the two intermingle, if you will, who's got kind of jurisdictional priority, if you will?
Well, we are all working, particularly in the DC area, with air traffic control. The DC area is a very restricted area. Private airplanes really can't go in there without prior permission. It's probably, that runway 36 is probably the busiest runway in the United States. And the airport itself is extremely busy. There's an aircraft taking off and landing every couple of minutes.
Yeah. And so it's air traffic control has primary responsibility for the coordination of the flight paths.
Right, one division of the air traffic control would be the tower or the approach control or the center, depending on where the aircraft was located.
Yeah. When a when a commercial flight is coming in for descent and landing at night, how much of what they see is visual, how much is instrumentation, and how wide is their periphery?
Well, last night we had clear skies, my understanding. And having flown into that airport probably over 1,000 times in my life, you would visually be positioning yourself on the lining up with the runway. It's quite easy to do, and you're avoiding any sensitive areas for noise. But if an aircraft is coming in the opposite direction, particularly if he's over the city, seeing the lights of that aircraft at night is extremely difficult. So no doubt that's part of the confusion here.
Interesting. Oh, that's a very interesting point. So visually, the lights make it difficult to see the helicopter or other aircraft. Are there any onboard electronic systems, clumsily I'll use the term radar, that should alert the pilots to
Yeah,
other aircraft in shared airspace?
an ADSB system,
Could
which
you
is
repeat that? I'm sorry.
it's called an ADSB system. And what it does is it looks all around the aircraft and it can see every other aircraft with a transponder and flag anything that might be a potential collision target. Now, why that wasn't used, or if it wasn't used, we really don't know. And that's going to certainly be a big part of the answer here to figuring out what happened.
Yeah. Obviously, in situations like this, flight data recorders are immediately sought after, so they can be, run diagnostics. What else has to happen?
Well, what will happen now is now
Yeah.
that we're out of the rescue phase, there's no one to be rescued. Now we'll go into the investigating phase. So they'll document everything. They'll be able to tell exactly how the aircraft impacted one another, the heading, the speed, just by mechanical reference as well as electronic reference. With the flight of data recorder, they'll be able to determine the position of every control surface on the airplane, the engine throttle settings. So if the pilot had seen the aircraft even at the last second and had made a change in the airplane's course, we would note that. If nothing changed, we could fairly well assume that the pilot of the airplane never saw the traffic.
Yeah.
Additionally, we'll have the cockpit voice recorder. We'll hear any conversation between the pilots and the radio transmissions and any communication with the flight attendants or anything else that took place. So these two items will be a big part of the investigation.
Yeah. And last question for you that just popped into my mind. The fact that this was a military helicopter, did that make it more common for it to be in that immediate area, i.e., are there rules in place to keep civilian helicopters out of that kind of navigable airspace when on approach and landing and takeoff?
That's the most restrictive airspace in the entire country. We have a big circle run around Washington, D.C., and unless you have special clearance, you can't enter that area. It's very well monitored. I'm sure that the helicopter was taking direction from someone. He was asked to pass behind the airplanes. That meant that he had a visual contact with the airplane. Question is, we don't know what airplane he was looking at. He may or may not have seen the proper one. So that'll be a big question in the investigation.